Today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating. It's an idea framed as a kind of strategic letter, and it lays out a detailed plan for how to keep people living entirely on the surface of their own lives. So, let's break this strategy down. Right off the bat, this is the core principle. The entire strategy is built on this one powerful idea, that depth is the enemy. This isn't just about preferring things that are shallow. No, this is framed as an all-out war against our deeper selves. So how is this war supposed to be waged? The first part of the document really gets into the main conflict. It basically argues that even though we as humans are built for depth, this whole strategy is designed to create a powerful, almost literal allergy to it. The stated goal in this letter is what it calls an empty life. And the main tactic to get there? To fight back against that natural, innate longing we all have for depth in our friendships, our beliefs, our experiences, everything. It's a direct assault on some of our most fundamental human desires. So, how do you actually do that to someone? Well, the strategy starts from the inside out. It focuses on these internal tactics to completely reshape a person's inner world, and the first thing it goes after is their feelings. The argument laid out in this document is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. It says the best way to stop someone from feeling anything too deeply is to just hit them with an onslaught of distractions, the very second an uncomfortable emotion starts to bubble up. And this just illustrates the cycle perfectly, doesn't it? An uncomfortable feeling pops up, and almost immediately an instant distraction's right there waiting. You scroll on your phone, grab a snack, turn on a show. The feeling gets numbed, but it never gets processed. And the end result of that cycle? A person who never really learns how to cope, someone who's just stuck on the surface. And the consequences are pretty severe. A person who gets caught in this loop never learns from their own feelings. They never figure out how to sort through them. According to the document, they basically spend their entire life just running away. So beyond just numbing our feelings, the next internal tactic is a full-on assault on our ability to focus. The logic here is really straightforward. Going deep takes time, and it takes focus. So this strategy attacks that by making our whole culture instantaneous, by making any thought that lasts longer than 10 seconds feel, boring. The result, as the document puts it, is an attention span that's whittled down to nearly nothing. So the letter really lays out these two opposing paths. On one hand, you've got a life of depth. It requires time, and it means you have to embrace a little tension. On the other hand, you've got a life on the surface. It's instantaneous, it avoids all tension, and it just runs on an engine of constant distraction. And right here, the strategy reveals its ultimate goal. It argues that by creating an aversion to depth in everyday life, you also create an aversion to what it calls the enemy, a term it uses to describe a higher power whose very nature is defined as depth itself. This quote just drives the whole point home. The endgame is to keep a person turned completely inward, trapped with their own feelings, totally isolated, and always running so they never turn outward or upward for any kind of help. Okay, so after reshaping the inner world, the strategy moves outward. Let's take a look at how it's designed to show up on the outside, specifically in our relationships. A key part of the plan is to make being vulnerable feel awkward and maybe even a little intrusive. And by keeping every single interaction on the surface, the strategy fosters a sense of frustration and loneliness, even when you're surrounded by people. The letter reframes a concept we all know. It suggests that what we call small talk isn't actually small, but it's surface talk, a tool specifically for maintaining that superficiality. The problem isn't the size of the conversation, it's the total lack of depth. So it makes you wonder, what is the actual cost of living in a world of constant surface talk? The intended outcomes are spelled out very clearly. People forget how to connect naturally. They stop knowing how to ask meaningful questions, and they end up feeling lonely and miserable, which is exactly where the strategy wants them to be. And now for the final piece of this strategy, the reinforcement mechanism. This is all about using a person's own history against them to make sure they never even try to go deep in the future. This final tactic is all about weaponizing a person's history. It takes those past experiences, the times you were vulnerable and got hurt, and it keeps those memories fresh, making the very idea of opening up again seem incredibly risky. And this shows that recoil mechanism in action. A critical moment for a real connection comes up, but then a past memory of being rejected gets triggered. The person recoils in fear, worried they'll just be burned again. The opportunity is lost, and they retreat right back to the safety of the surface. This quote really shows you just how calculated this tactic is. It's about actively using a person's own painful memories as a weapon to convince them that being vulnerable will always, always lead to rejection. So as we wrap up, the main takeaway here is pretty clear. All these patterns we've looked at, the numbing with distraction, the fractured attention, the superficial relationships, using past pain against us, they aren't just random accidents. The letter presents them as pieces of a single, interlocking strategy, all designed to keep us on the surface. And that leaves us with a final, really important question. If all these patterns are part of a deliberate strategy to keep us living a surface-level life, then the challenge becomes a conscious one. In a world that seems built for distraction, how do we intentionally choose depth?